Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So, this evening, tomorrow is the culmination of some days of reflecting on a topic. So many Sundays we have a local family group, parents and the children, and we're trying to, address the elephant in the room. What is it the parents are doing when they're sitting quietly? I mean, we're talking, our cats will never understand, but our children might just get it eventually if we're able to explain it in a coherent way. And but in order to explain it, we've got to understand it. In order to understand what is this practice, what is this teaching, what is this lifestyle, we have to investigate. We have to ask ourselves, what do I really think I'm doing? What do I really think this is all about? And it's fun to do it with children in the room, because there's a lot of assumptions that they do not make. A lot of good questions that they're asked, or a lot of good perspectives. It's amazing when you take somebody who has no book knowledge on these subjects, like on the mind, or on morality, or on wisdom and truth, and you say something that has been put forth as, well, this is true, and sometimes they're just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And it's just like, oh great, it confirms it. Because once we get enough technical knowledge, it stops making so much sense. We start questioning ourselves, and it's like, how does this fit together again? But to be able to sit down and work through it and have an open mind, a beginner's mind, we get to see that actually when we first heard about the Buddha's teachings, when we first heard about the potential for meditation practice, that yes, our mind does wacky stuff. Yes, it causes pain, but yes, there is a way out of it. It made sense. It made sense at the point of impact. And in some ways, after we get all the technical knowledge, we have to work our way back to that just the natural point of impact. Yeah, that's true. That makes sense. I can deal with that. I can accept that. And so we're going to start looking. We're going to start looking at the Four Noble Truths. And so tonight we'll be just sort of talking around the first noble truth. And those of you who know what that is, this is your last chance. You can get out of the room quickly. The first noble truth, as the Buddha puts it forth, is dukkha. Basically, dukkha is the noble truth. And that simple Pali formula is basically saying there is this truth of reality, that there is suffering. And as I said, at the point of impact, that is obvious. But once we start investigating it, we start questioning, well, what is this dukkha? What does dukkha mean? And then why would you tell me this? This doesn't sound like good news. But then again, the caveat to the investigation of all the noble truths is that these are noble truths, and that's not said lightly. So true, because truth, as we've covered again and again in the Buddha's teachings, the only things that get this label of truth are those things that are universally true. So the things that are really worthy of the term truth will apply to all people in all situations at all times. And when we boil it down, there's not a lot of things that you can say about all people and at all times. And most of them are not characteristics. Most of them are allude to processes. You can say that all people get old. You can say that all people, are susceptible to illness. You say that all people will die. You say that all things will die, all plants will die, all animals will die. And because of this factor of death, you can say that you will eventually lose anything that is dear to you. You don't get to hang on to it. You don't get to take it with you. And already it's pretty bleak. But it goes on. You say, because you are here, you have a spot in time and space, you will have to associate with things that you would not choose to, that are unpleasant. There are unpleasant things that you will not get a choice about. You will be separated, again, by time and space, or through this aging, sickness, and death, from those things that you like. And furthermore, every object in the world has the potential for pain wrapped within it, because if we cling to that object, as it ages, it breaks, and it dies, will be separated from us, and that attachment will cause us pain. So this is the truth, that the Buddha specifically chose these things because in reality, our own personal experience of pain, dukkha, is going to be different. So-and-so is dukkha, or hearing that kind of thing is dukkha, or eating this kind of food is dukkha, or having to sit for an hour at a time is dukkha, or not getting to sit for an hour at a time is dukkha. But the Buddha, specifically when he was trying to describe an experience that we can relate to, he chose these very specific things which are universal. Yeah. So this is not mere concept. And as we're going to cover, it's actually the things that he points to don't have to be dukkha, in terms of like mental suffering. They don't have to be a disaster. But it's easy to point to them because these things are not inherently pleasant. These are inherently unpleasant things. And you would have to look long and hard to find any person who is excited about dying. And if you investigate it, it's not actually that they find death to be pleasant, because people do not find death to be pleasant. It's probably that they're just seeking release from a greater suffering than what they're perceiving in death. Because it's very natural for a person in the right mind to want to live, to want to be healthy, to want to be young and energetic. It's very natural to want to keep the things that we like and stay away from the things that we don't like. This is natural. And so these are universal, acceptable experiences that we can say, yeah, I don't want those. I'd like to get away from those. And so this is truth with a capital T. It's simple and it's right there. But the Buddha was once asked, he was approached by somebody, and somebody said, I heard what your teachings are very pleasant to the ear. They're very good to hear. People like your teachings. But I just talked with somebody who heard a teaching of yours and didn't like it. You were calling them a fool. And how is it that you could give these teachings that people don't like? And the Buddha said, well, you might have gotten it a little wrong. When I'm deciding what to say, I don't use the criteria of whether or not the person will like what I'm going to say. The criteria I use is, will it be beneficial and will it be true? And if both of those are true, if both of those things are in fact the reality, then I will say it. I will know the time and place to say it, even if it's unpleasant. But if what I'm going to say is not beneficial, then I won't say it. So the Buddha doesn't say things just because they're true. Likewise, even if it's going to be beneficial, like, oh, don't worry, it'll work out, you'll be fine. It might not be true. You might know, well, you do have terminal cancer. You are going to die, but don't worry. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Don't think about it. The Buddha doesn't say things that are not going to be true. But if something is true and beneficial, then he knows the time and place to say it, whether or not it's easy to hear. And this noble truth is called noble, not just because it's true and that it's true to everybody. The nobility in the truth is that it gives us the potential to be better. It is an ennobling truth. And that's what I find really, really beautiful about this, because at the point of impact, when you first hear it, you know, yeah, this seems to be the case. But why is that such a relief? Why is it such a relief to hear you're going to die? And I think that when many people are like, well, I'm glad we're talking about it. And the only reason you would be glad to be talking about it is if you had not been able to talk about it previously. It is a relief of the suffering of trying to work around something that is a basic reality. The nobility in this truth is the benefit. And I think that that's something that we grow into an appreciation of. But, standing back and looking at meditators, looking at practitioners, looking at people who have studied the Buddhist teaching, I think the number one thing that you pick up on, as you look at them and study them, is their relationship to difficulty. And I think it's very profound. I was at one point I was practicing Buddhism, but I was in a relationship with somebody who was not a Buddhist practitioner per se. They had a meditation practice, but they're a normal person in the world. And it really struck me over time interacting with them how many things were a disaster in their day-to-day life. This thing broke. I really needed it. This is a disaster. And I would be there and I'd be like, oh, don't worry. This is manageable. Like, we can fix it, or we can replace it, or we can find something else that'll work in the situation, or we can do without. You're still alive. So this is not that bad. Or a conversation with somebody goes really bad, maybe leads to an argument. And it's just, oh, this is such a mess and it's going to destroy my social life and there's no getting over this. And I'd be like, well, no, tomorrow's another day. You'll have another chance to talk with this person. Maybe you'll be able to work it out, or maybe you won't. But, I won't like walk away just because you got in this argument and said some nasty things to this person. Like, we all make mistakes. And it's just one thing to the next, realizing that many people in the world, because the world is set up to be the source of their happiness, live in this state of constant disaster. Because when things don't go the way that they wanted or intended or planned, they're being separated, prevented from their happiness. And to appreciate that before this first noble truth becomes an accepted part of our reality, the existence of suffering, the existence of pain or anxiety or fear or greed or anger is usually given as the sign that we're doing something wrong, because I'm supposed to be happy, right? Just be happy in this world. Things are supposed to work out. It's like somebody's looking out for me up there. And if I just got it right, everything would be smooth. Everything would be successful. So the existence of failure, the existence of loss seems to contradict that. It seems to, I guess I didn't do the right thing, or I guess I didn't, pay homage to the right person, or I guess I didn't get the right kind of insurance, that things went awry. So the Buddha says right from the get-go, no, you can actually expect that. You're guaranteed. And the crazy person who's susceptible to Buddhist practice will say, oh, thank God. Oh, great. So it's not my fault. And yes, that is the nobility, that is the relief that comes from this. It's not your fault. It's actually built into the system that you're going to fail. You're going to experience physical pain. You're going to experience loss. You're going to get sick, sometimes out of nowhere. You'll be like, well, I drink so much juice. Why am I getting a cold? Right? How many times have I heard that? It's like, monkeys eat fruit. They only eat fruit. You think they never get a cold? But we do. We think these things, and we're told these things, right? That this will protect us. This very simple ceremony that we do over and over again of taking refuge in the triple gem is saying, well, no, that's not. There's nothing that will protect us from these. Yeah. That is not where our happiness, where our security is going to be found, because how could our ultimate, permanent security be found in something that is always changing? Yeah. And the things in the world are always changing. They're always aging and breaking down and dying and being replaced by new things. There's nothing stable amongst it. And so you see, for a practitioner, this is, it's all about the relationship we have to suffering. Now, the Buddha picked a variety of circumstances that are unpleasant. And these are, in fact, the clinical definition of dukkha. The word literally means pain. But the rest of the teaching, the rest of the Eightfold Path, deals with the fact that whereas physical pain might be a guarantee, physical loss might be a guarantee, mental pain is an optional experience. And this is the ennobling part of this truth. We can develop a relationship with the expected and natural unpleasant experiences that cause them to cease to be mental suffering. And specifically, this is what you see with people who take this on and who study this and let this into their life. You see that they develop a new relationship with aging, sickness, death, and loss that it grows over time to the point where what was a disaster is now, it hardly even registers. It's like, oh, it broke. Well, I guess we'll have to get a new one. But things break. For some people, it's like, oh, I needed that thing. But for the practitioner, it's like, yeah, it was going to break someday. Today is the day. I should have seen it coming. I should have known. I should have been prepared. But this is not the end of the world. Yeah. Because as long as I've been here, there hasn't been an end of the world. There's been an end of the little worlds, the little moments and little constructions that we built up. But the end of our little worlds has been like sandcastles getting knocked over by surf. They were built of our expectations and our plans and our thoughts. They weren't actually that stable to begin with. But the world keeps on going because it's filled with nothing but transient objects. And there's always the next one and the next one. Practitioner begins to see that aging is guaranteed, right? It doesn't have to be a disaster. It doesn't become pleasant. I remember hearing a teacher, Luang Por Sumedho, used to say that when he was growing up, he actually looked forward to being old. And he was like, yeah, old people, they're so calm, they're so chill. They just sit on the porch and somebody brings them some food and they eat, but they don't care much about the food, because they've eaten like 80,000 times before. So it's, it's just food. And people come to them with their problems and they're like, oh, this is so terrible. And they've seen it all before. So they're like, yeah, that'll happen. This too shall pass. And then, oh, you're so wise, you're so wise. It's like, it's going to be great being an old person. And that's true. And that's actually a great perspective, looking forward to something that's going to come anyway. You you're in pretty good shape. But to understand that the actual experience of aging that the Buddha is pointing to is that which we don't really look forward to, the loss of youth, the loss of vitality, the loss of being able to do whatever we want. Like Eowyn talking about her mother during the Daylong retreat. You're just trying to do a simple thing that almost anybody could do, to just get up on top of something and reach for something. But at a certain age, that becomes a very treacherous activity. And our balance isn't good, and our sight isn't good. And if we fall, we can get seriously injured because our bones and our muscles and everything is much weaker. So that's the part, like, we wouldn't want. We wouldn't look forward to that. Why would anybody look forward to that? Oh, I can't wait to just sit around and not be able to do anything, and just wait for somebody to, bring me over to the bingo hall. Why would anybody look forward to that? But yet it doesn't have to be mental suffering. A shining example of this is Somdet Mahagosananda. He was the supreme patriarch of Cambodia after the Khmer Rouge, this horrible genocide that happened in their country. He was out of the country and he came back, and he helped rebuild the Sangha, the monastic Sangha, and people's faith in Buddhism, and helped the country put itself back together. He actually died not far from here in Western Massachusetts. But in the later years of his life, he was suffering from dementia. And some people even speculated that maybe he had been poisoned. And he'd make a number of enemies doing the work that he was doing. But his mind was going. And his teachings went from very insightful, coherent, Dhamma talks to, he just focused on like 3 words, basically. He would say, gratitude, and patience and compassion. He would say these in Pali: Katanyo, Karana, Katawedi. He would just say these over and over again, because he couldn't form huge, complicated Dhamma talks. But really, when it comes down to it, what do you need? Like, if you're going to be boiled down to 3 words, could you find better words than gratitude and compassion and patience? I mean, that I could be so lucky to let those be the last 3 words that I can manage to get out of my mouth. And as things faded, he lost all ability to decide where he would go. And the different communities were sort of like passing him around, because he would bring all of this interest and donations and faith to whatever temple he was at. So he was just getting passed around like a Buddha statue. But he was okay with that. Apparently, people would meet him and just be like, he's so bright, so relaxed. I mean, I get the sense he wants to say things from time to time, but he knows he knows it's not going to come out right. So he's just being. And you see, even somebody who can just be can light up a whole room. And he would always be surrounded by people, and the people they weren't bowing to him and chanting to him and treating him like a Buddha statue. They would sit, they would eat their meal, or they would crochet something, or they would read a book. They just wanted to be in the room with them. And that's a whole different perspective. It's just something so natural, like getting old, when it is held properly. It gives faith and energy and inspiration to all of the other people around you. And now, why is that? Because again, this is a noble truth. It is an ennobling truth, because we are all susceptible to that. And in some ways, the people who are going through it have a wonderful teaching that they can offer. And what better teaching can there be than how to be with something difficult? And so there are all sorts of experiences the Buddha could have pointed to, the experience of addiction, or the experience of suicidal thoughts, or the experience of losing, a loved one, or a relationship breaking up. The Buddha could have pointed to these. And certainly in each of these cases, when somebody goes through this, they have something they can offer to somebody who goes through it later. They can be like, yeah, hey, you're going to feel this, you're going to feel this, you're going to feel this. And those experiences are another example of this. But at the simplest level, those are only going to apply to people going through those experiences. Like, I can't really connect with somebody who is suffering from drug addiction because I have not gone through that. So I would refer them to somebody who has, just because there are more basic kinds of suffering that I can connect with, but that one's a very specific one. So this noble truth, it shines a light on those, and says that when those are present, when those are moved through, when those are understood, then we actually have a function for our pain. We have a function for our challenges, even something that is extraordinarily difficult for us. As we are passing through it, and as we have passed through it, we have gained something. We've gained something that we don't then lose. We have gained experience. We know what suffering is like. We know what pain is like. We can describe it. We can talk about how you deal with it. We can talk about what it's like when it's over, because that is the reality. Is though pain is guaranteed, it is also impermanent. Yeah, and any pain that we have in life ceases at death, and any pain that we have in death might be resolved if you believe in rebirth and in those processes, or you believe that the mind can exist free from a body. Then there could be a potential that even death is not a permanent form of suffering. Now, you permanently lose what you had, but then again, you're losing stuff that you had all of the time, and you get over it. Yeah. So this experience can be seen once you see it and accept it and understand it. Even that can just be something where you say, yep, I'm going to go through that. It's going to be kind of bad. I don't think I'm going to enjoy it per se, but I know it will be temporary. And I know that, other things will come about. Yeah. This is not going to be the end of the world. It might be the end of a small W world, but it won't be the end of everything. Things will continue because they've always been arising and ceasing just like this. And so this is what I invite you in this evening, or any evening, or any morning or afternoon for that matter, to give some time to think about this first noble truth. I think it is one of the most powerful ones, because it's true. I'm really into the Eightfold Path. I really think craving is a disaster. I think Nibbana is awesome, and can't wait till I get an experience of it all the time. But when it comes down to it, the thing that really made this real for me, that got me in this path, was the first noble truth. Because I think the potential to be okay with what had previously been a disaster was just something I could not look past. This is what I really wanted. Like, yeah, I'm suffering, but how do I be with it? Yeah. It turns out, and this is the case with all of the noble truths, but this one, you can see it very strongly. It turns out that in any moment where you stop and you contemplate this aspect of pain is a noble truth, when you contemplate aging, sickness, and death, it doesn't matter which part of this experience you are contemplating. In that moment, you are doing what you would want to have happen in the future. You are being with this noble truth. You are being with the reality of an unpleasant situation. Even in thinking of it, you're not necessarily dying, but if when you're living, you think about, I too shall die, in that moment, you are being with the thought, I will die. Yeah. So you're already generating the acceptance and the wisdom and the knowledge and understanding that you would want to have at the time of your own death. Yeah. So you're already doing this practice. You're already becoming, noble and wise for an experience that you don't yet have. Yeah. And so if you're lucky enough to be introduced to this teaching early enough that you get days and weeks and months and years, and you come back to this even just a few times during each of those years, then by the time you actually get to one of these experiences, it won't be a shock. It won't be a disaster. It will be like, here we go. Here we go. I was told, and I have studied. I knew there was going to be a test, and I am prepared. And I think the opportunity of that is just irresistible, right? Because, you can do it the other way. And I fully, invite you to not just do what I say. But if you want to go through suffering and just let it surprise you and see how you roll with it, then good luck. Good luck. Who am I to say? Everybody needs a hobby, but I think it would be wonderful to have thought about it beforehand, to be ready for it. And I think that when you begin to do that, you're giving. It's this thing, because this is an experience that, because it's painful, will be scary to other beings. So to any degree that you cannot be afraid, to any degree that you cannot be anxious, to any degree that you cannot suffer mentally over these experiences, you will be able to offer that to everybody. Every man, woman, child, cat, dog, squirrel, insect, every living and to be living being that you will ever encounter can appreciate, and gain something from your acceptance of what you are lucky enough to know was guaranteed. Yeah. All right. And so I offer these thoughts for your reflection this evening, and may it be of benefit in your practice going forward.